In 2021, I was real fat. I was at the fattest I've ever been. I think I was around 245, 250. Right now I sit at 195, 200. I'm actually not someone that looks at the scale often. I don't like using it as a metric of success or something to make me feel good about myself. For some context, I'm a runner. I'm training to do an 8-hour endurance run. And when I'm training for something like this run, I do typically want to feel leaner, but I'm not looking at numbers on the scale. I happen to know that the weight at one point was around 245, 250 because I was at my mother-in-law's house and I stepped on the scale and I was actually feeling not great. I had seen myself in the mirror, but you know, when you start gaining weight, it's a slow thing, right? Maybe you notice, like I noticed one time, like a little bit of like fat, like pushed out on the top of my ribs, and I was sitting drinking some whiskey and an IPA during COVID. I sat down and I was like, I felt like a bloop, and I was like, oh, that's a new thing. And I kind of laughed it off. But mostly you slowly gain the weight so you don't notice it. But I knew things weren't awesome. Nonetheless, I was at my mother-in-law's house and I stepped on the scale before I indulged in the multiple pounds of fried food that I had obtained with my brother-in-law. I stepped on the scale and I saw the numbers 247 and I thought, wow, that's a lot. And I was feeling decent at this time. I had done a couple jogs. Maybe I'd gone to the gym and looked at the equipment. I don't know if I used it. So I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that I've lost 60 pounds and kept it off consistently over the last few years. And I'm going to try to keep this video quick. And by the end of this video, I want you to have one solid mental tool that you can use to try to help yourself become less of a slob, or to become less sad, or, you know, to unfuck some of the things in your life that you fucked up. Because, oh boy, it is a long journey and I required a lot of help, a lot of little nuggets of wisdom like this in videos along the way. All right, so what changed from 2021, 247 to 200 and God knows what pounds, to now consistently 195, 200 pounds. I started a running streak, a daily running streak in 2021 that I have not broken. In a few days from now, it'll be 3 years of running a mile a day. I'm definitely implementing at least a mile a day. Some days I do more. Some days I do just a mile. I finally cracked the code. I stopped overindulging in self-help content because I was just watching self-development video after self-development video, just getting fatter and sadder. I was addicted to the idea of improving myself. But at some point, I decided to finally start doing the work, to start putting into action the things that I was listening to and the media and the books that I was consuming. I started to use some of the stuff that I learned. So what was the thing? The first thing was shame. I was feeling very bad about feeling so out of shape. But that year, in 2021, during spring break, we went on vacation as a family, and my son took this photo of me. And that photo made me feel real bad. I realized that's the guy he looks up to. And maybe you're looking at that photo and you're thinking, man, that's not so fat that you will get denied access to rides at Disney World. Maybe you don't need to request a second seat at Southwest. I get it. I used to tell myself these stories. But for me, it was bad. I've always been not always, but for a long time, for most of my life, I'd been an active person. And then I just got into this sad place where I stopped taking care of myself. Real sad, real fat. Honestly, was a lot of fun to get that fat. The sadness wasn't great, but nonetheless, that photo made me feel so much shame. And I know there's a camp of people that are like, you should love your body no matter what. You should love you for who you are, and don't let the patriarchy, it's a man's world telling you should be skinny. Look, I get some of those arguments, and I get what they're saying, and I had to love myself, even though I'd let myself go. But what I think people are missing from those arguments when they say you should love yourself no matter what they're missing is, yes, love yourself, but also respect your body. You just dumping gallons of ice cream and eating McDonald's every day and overindulging and telling yourself, oh, I've deserved this. I earned this. I don't need to prove anything to anyone else. That is not you loving yourself. That is you telling yourself a story to justify your addiction. That's what that is. You need to respect yourself. So I felt shame because I hadn't been respecting myself. But shame alone was not enough for me to change, to cross over to the threshold from someone that was overindulging in self-help content to someone that started actually using the stuff I'd been learning. Fear setting. Old Timmy Boy Ferriss, Pappy Tim, gave a TED Talk on this a long time ago. And as one of the tools that I'd locked away when I was sitting, getting fatter, eating Doritos, drinking IPAs on the back porch, headphones, earbuds in, listening to self-help videos. God, gross. You know, I remember fear setting, and I had a real honest moment with myself. I had seen that picture, right? I knew that that's who my son looked up to. So I closed my eyes and I imagined the scariest thing I could think of. One of the things I thought of, which scared me, but it wasn't the scariest thing. I pictured my son looking like me, maybe worse. And then the realization that I was rolling for him how to live your life. That was pretty scary. But the scariest, I thought about how my father, who I no longer speak to, it's been like a decade or so, but I'm fine. I'm okay. All right. We don't even need to talk about it. My dad, I had heard through the grapevine that my dad had like a heart attack or something that almost took him out. And I don't even think my dad's 60. Maybe he's 60 now. But he's like in his mid-50s. So if my son or my stepdaughter grew up and were like fairly responsible and had kids at like a reasonable age when they started getting their career going, and not to say if you did it the other way is wrong. I had a child when I was 23, 22, and I have custody of him. And it was one of the hardest things, still the hardest thing. But I started thinking about how I might not be able to see my grandchildren. Then I thought about me dying. And at my funeral, I could see the image of my kid, my son, who I have custody of, and his mom and whatever boyfriend she's with at the time. So for all intents and purposes, my son's stepdad. I visualized them dumping out my ashes and my son being consoled by another man because I lacked the discipline and the ambition necessary to set a good example to be the leader of my household. And that was enough for me to get out and to make myself run a mile and to keep going and to not stop. And maybe that's obsessive. And if I can't run tomorrow because I stopped today for some reason, I'll find another thing to do to set better examples. So the thing to take away from this video is listen to your shame. Don't let your shame do the driving. But your shame you should be curious about your shame, right? Because your shame's telling you something. And then use that shame to identify your fear. Because if you're in shame, yes, maybe there's something that you have to deal with childhood trauma and all that. Like, been there, done that, still working on it. My shame was there, and I was curious about it. And it was an indicator that I was not living up to what I thought my potential could be. And this isn't like a go out and win the day thing. It's just I wasn't taking care of myself, and it was making me feel bad. I could have been doing better. You don't need to do as much as I was doing, and I don't need to be doing everything I'm doing, but I wasn't trying. And then that led to me setting a fear setting, and then sitting with myself and identifying my biggest fear and thinking, how do I make sure that doesn't become a reality? I love your face, and I'll see you again soon. Things in the comments, I guess, like if you think that fear setting is useful. And then, encourage one another. If you're a twat waffle in the comments, I'll delete your comments. That's not what this place is about. Love you. Bye.